Sup nerds? Own Goal here, bringing you a video of my teammate Attackspeedenjoyer coming with an extremely polarized build. We want to spend this video talking about polarization. So it's kind of the idea that you can take balanced builds, which are kind of in the middle. They have a little bit of everything, and you can take polarized builds that really overload on one axis. So in this case, he's he's gone for a very, very large number of foot archers. Dear God, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The literal maximum. So he has he has 12 Glade Guard archers. And the idea behind this is these balance builds will frequently have like some tools to deal with a particular plan. So like the scariest thing wood elves can do against dwarves is a melee buildup. They can take like a lot of melee infantry and a little bit of supporting ranged, build a big melee wall and run you over. And the dwarves player in this case is like reasonably ready for that. You know, he's got a bunch of iron breakers, which have very powerful grenades, and some good anti-infantry tools, and then like a little bit of stuff to catch range builds. And what attack speed is doing is taking like a massive amount of one kind of unit to exceed the amount of counter range pieces his opponent has. And I think these things can work really well, and they're also kind of fun to brew up because you get to do these like crazy extreme strategies. So I recommend like trying them out, being ready to lose, and sometimes it'll work. So he essentially just walks up here. From a tactical perspective, this execution is not the best. Attack speed's a very good player, um, but sometimes he can struggle a little bit when doing these like alternative strategies. Uh, Particularly like you wanna get the maximum firing concave you can around your enemy, while leaving as few units exposed to getting doubled up on as possible. So he probably wanted to like spot the dwarf formation and come in like this. Because his arc is so small, these units are closer to the enemy than they need to be, and all of these are way more clumped. So he could be getting all of these in fire contact while occupying a much larger space. But still, the dwarven opponent doesn't have that many tools to deal with all of these Glade Guard. So attack speed's going to shoot him and back up. And you can see like some of the dwarven tools are working. Like they're getting into melee, they're counter-firing these, but there's just so many archers left over that attack speed is able to deal with the initial push of dwarven units. And then he can abuse the much faster elven reinforcements. Like the dwarves have slayers, gyros, and not a lot else once their initial wave dies. And so attack speed is executing on this very polarized build, trading off units and then summoning reinforcements, which is it's a pretty cool strategy. Honestly, he got me with one of these the other day, just bringing all cav. And in reality, like you want to not be 100% polarized. Like I like this limit testing. You should do it. It's a good way to see what works and doesn't. But pulling it back in just a little bit will usually be a little bit more optimal. So like with all ranged units like this, if one infantry breaks through, you need to expend a disproportionate amount of resources to stop it. And having just like a little bit, maybe 8 or 9 ranged units, it's still pretty polarized, but has a little bit more stuff to stop breakthrough units. Um, the same principle applies, however. So here you can see he trades stuff off. Because he's a little bit weak on his secondary, uh, when he runs out of initial archers in this first wave, you can see right here, and this is something you can adjust, like the Slayer Pirates, the Miners, and some of these units are able to get like a decent counter push off, so he's like running out of ammo. He doesn't quite have the infantry tools to fight. And you can imagine how if he had like a couple less archers, but still like a big overload, in this situation, he would just be like putting a war dancer on this miner and pretty easily clearing it. So that's one thought, is like experiment with how much to polarize and find a balance that works for you. Because you want to overload their thing, but you don't want to make it very easy for them to also get too much value on one unit that counters the kind of unit you've got. So the dwarves have an okay counter push going here. They're going to need to capture multiple points. And this is where what we talked about earlier, like the superior speed of the Wood Elf reinforcements can really be seen. So you've got like some Slayers and Miners coming in, but they're not arriving quickly. And even though the Elves end up losing their points here, they still got a lot of game because the Dwarves just have these Slayers, and like they're not going to match up well against infantry like Dryads. So there's like a little bit of back and forth here, some ebb and flow. you can see how the lack of infantry is costing him a bit. And like when these war dancers show up, they're doing great. You know, they're extremely good against the non-specialized duelists of the dwarves. So he just, you know, the same idea, but like probably a few more of these. They trade back and forth a bit. He counter pushes, he caps, and then the Wood Elves win. So looking at the value of the units, you can see that like most of his initial summons did okay. Some of them did very well, and he's able to have more fire than the dwarves can shut down. And then his reinforcement units did well enough. You know, it's the cleanup crew. So if you were to try this, I would like experiment with the maximum overload first, and then probably dial it back a little bit. You know, like cut 2 of these, have some more war dancers, have some dryads earlier, so you can exert more early point pressure. And then also, if you're going to polarize, have multiple things you can do. So try polarizing like all ranged and all melee. Uh, and especially at a high level of play, having multiple viable builds that cover your opponent's likely range can be really threatening because they have to decide whether they like guess into what you're playing, or whether they cover all the bases and potentially get like overwhelmed by the one that you end up going for, regardless of which it is. The dwarf units didn't do particularly well. So that's a relatively clean example of like taking a build that stresses them too much on one axis, outstatting them, trading well, and then bringing it home with your mobility core. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this kind of content, remember to like and subscribe. See you soon, nerds.